Hi, Connie.
Hi, did you want me to share?
Hi, Connie.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't tell my.
That's okay. I was wondering if you wanted me to share, because I see you have the thing up already.
As you wish. I put it on because just I arrived early and
Thank you.
but I can stop the sharing and
Well, yeah, well, thank you. If you want to, you can do it. It's okay. But here we go. Okay. So how are you this morning?
I think that was, I mean, as expected, the number of participants was not very high because it is the other side of the world, but the comments were quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it was very good.
And they're mainly they were about the communication, right? Improving communication and improving the way they can interact with the hubs, which is exactly what we had in mind to this. So I'm quite happy.
I am too. I'm very happy with what we did last night.
And also the material that is put there is actually quite good. The slide deck now that we have is actually much better than the standard one we had. I mean, it's more up to date.
Yeah, this one is a very good one.
And I think we have to put the two document that Aaron was presenting should be
Added.
on the CPS website.
Exactly.
So,
Well, I want to say good morning to Jessica, who's one of our speakers, and good morning to everybody else that's here early. I appreciate you being here. This Piero is our director, and Jessica is one of our co-leads for the community engagement. She'll be talking today. And I'm Connie Walker. I'm one of the people with Piero on the management team. Okay, so I'm just setting up here a little bit, and I'm almost done.
Is my sound okay? Because I have an external speaker hooked up. Is it the volume?
Wow, it's beautiful.
Okay, great.
Yes, it's best I've heard, I'm sorry, that you've had in a while. It's very good.
I don't usually have it connected because it takes up space on my desk.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy. Okay. So we were supposed to have, believe it or not, a Q&A here. I had set it up and I don't see it. So let's see. Oh, it's hidden. Let's see what this. So how do we do this Q&A? Can people, they should be able to see it. I don't have the typical banner at the bottom of the screen that everybody else has. So I will not be able to see to it.
I think that if you insist going down with the mouse below, they should appear.
Oh, it's up. The box is up here. I have it open, but so it's down the bottom. So we could just tell people if they want, they can also use the Q&A, right?
I can see the Q&A in my.
And open it up and see what both of you, if you can, and then you can also.
Yeah, I have it open now.
Okay. So we have two possibilities, or three, actually. They can raise their hand electronically. They can ask questions either through the chat or through question and answer, whichever they'd like. Okay, so maybe if you want to say that at the beginning, Piero, so they will know, or I could say it if you forget, that'd be great.
Well, we wait until a few more people are on.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I only see a fraction of the people, but we do have about 13 people so far, so that's good. And I want to say hello to our guests. Thank you very much for being here. We're thrilled to have this town hall, and Piero's going to tell you all about it. Okay. So what I might do, if you don't mind, is just remind a couple people who are speaking. Oops, What are we doing for time? We just have like another minute. Okay. Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, Connie, Piero.
Oh, you're here. Very good, Aaron. Thank you so much. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
getting it to a couple other people.
Yeah, no worries. I am going to step away for a few minutes if that's okay. I don't think I'm needed for the very beginning. I just desperately need to make myself some coffee.
Oh, will you make one for me too?
I'll send you a virtual coffee.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
All right. See you soon.
Okay, so Federico's connected. Thank you, Federico. Um, okay, so very good. So if we have any questions about comms, Matt's on the Zoom, let's see. Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Yana, how are you? If we have any difficult questions, you're gonna answer them, right?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Yeah, and nice to see you. Yana and I
you.
and Michelle Bannister were in New Zealand together at the Dark Sky conference that they had there. It was a very good conference. All right. I see a lot of people I know. They're welcome, and those I don't. Okay. So people are still coming on board.
Hello, good morning to some, good afternoon,
Good afternoon. Hi.
and Happy New Year. We are still in January, so
Yeah, but soon February, isn't that true? All right, so it's slowing down now a little bit, and
I think we should wait the standard 5 minutes because the number is growing. So let's wait for a moment, few moments.
so Piero, there's someone requesting to note take. I think that would that be all right with you? Someone we don't know. Okay, all right. Whenever you're ready, Piero.
1 more minute.
Certainly. I can see everyone.
Hi, Dr. Connie.
Hello. Hi.
Could I ask you before we start?
I actually can't see who's talking. Who's that?
Is okay, من observatory.
Very nice to see you.
Just ask you about the proceeding of La Palma at La Palma. There is published yet or no?
I'm not understanding. I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, Connie is asking if the proceeding of the La Palma meeting, La Palma symposium has been printed yet, but I think it's not yet because it is in the end of the Cambridge University Press, and I don't think it's been they finished to publish.
Editorial.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
I can tell you, I'm part of the editorial team. Yeah, it's had some difficulties because of not our end, the other end, and it's being worked through. And they gave us what should be the final PDF. So we're going through that now, and then we'll be handing it back to the publishing company. So it should be
Okay,
really soon.
thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you, Piero.
Okay, Connie, I think we can start now. If you go to the first slide.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay.
So, hello everybody, and welcome to the first town hall meeting of the entire community of the CPS affiliated members. And you may not know yet, but your community is now have more than 400 members. So it's a large community. And first of all, I wish to thank you for your generous offer to collaborate with the CPS in pursuing its mission of protecting the dark and quiet sky from the interference of large satellite constellation. As you know, the CPS is a coordinating center that relies on the efforts of people like you who share the concern of preserving the science of astronomy and the pristine appearance of the night sky. And thanks to the enthusiastic contribution of several of you, the CPS, in its 3 years of existence, has achieved important goals, from the understanding and scientific characterization of the satellite interference, both in optical, infrared, and radio wavelength, to the study and implementation of mitigating measures in close collaboration with the space industry and the constellation companies. The center has also reviewed the existing national and international policies about orbital light pollution and produced brochures and video tutorials to inform society about the epochal change in the use of the low orbit outer space. More details about this achievement will be given momentarily by the co-leaders of the 4 areas or hubs of the CPS activity. Now, the question is, did the CPS complete its mission after 3 years of activity? And the answer is a clear no, because on one side, the rapid evolution of the diverse constellation deployment is posing new challenges to the mitigating effort. For example, the somehow unexpected interference of the unintended electromagnetic radiation and the potential, still poorly understood and studied, contamination of the upper atmosphere by the constant re-entry of the inoperative satellites are just a couple of examples of new emerging issues that require attention. Moreover, the most promising mitigating measures, which have been proposed and experimented with in collaboration with the constellation companies, are still at the prototype level of implementation. A substantial financial and in-kind effort will be needed to move from a prototype to a service offered to any interested observer. The IAU and the CPS partners, Noir Lab and SKO, are well aware of the issue and are considering it in the current revision of the CPS Memorandum of Understanding, whose renewal is due next April. In particular, the IAU has recently appointed a full-time professional fundraiser who will be instrumental in exploring possible fundings. In the meantime, the CPS can make substantial progress in some areas by more efficiently using the collaborative offer that you, the affiliated member, made. Connie, if you move to the next slide, you can just see that you are now a community of more than 400 individuals spread all over the world in many, many countries, all with diverse expertise and time availability, although all united by the common concern of protecting the dark and quiet sky. Many of you are already effectively contributing to the hub's activity, but the potential for expanding the collaboration is substantial. And the path to a more effective collaboration stems from better communication and interaction opportunities with the affiliated members. And we are happy to inform you about some initiatives to achieve the above goals. The first and most obvious is these general town meetings, which we intend to repeat at suitable interval, maybe every 6 months, possibly staggered with more focused and specialized hubs meeting, open to all the interested members. These are top-level opportunities to inform you and exchange views interactively about the progress of the CPS activity and about specific opportunities to contribute to them. A second important initiative is a quarterly CPS newsletter, the first issues of which will be published in a couple of weeks. The newsletter will primarily target the affiliated members, but hopefully will be helpful to any interested reader. The published issue will be available on the CPS website, of course. And the newsletter will also be a natural communication channel for informing members about projects and activity that are particularly suitable for collaborative efforts. I leave it to my colleagues to be more specific about this aspect, but I can already mention that, for example, translating part of the CPS documentation, such as brochures and video tutorials, into many main world languages will be a valuable contribution to raising the public awareness of what is happening into our skies. I hope you will find this initiative interesting, and we are eager to hear from your comments and suggestions for improving them. And I see that we already have one question from Kevin. Kevin?
Hey, very quickly, all I was going to say, Piero, is I don't see the presentation you are referring to being shared on the screen. That was all. If there's a presentation that Connie's supposed to be sharing, that's not being shared to the group. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Can anyone else see it or not see it?
See it?
Trish,
Yeah, we
Yes.
see
can
it.
you see it?
I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it. So I think you might have a problem locally because I see that everybody's seeing that. Okay, is there any other question before I pass the floor to my colleagues for a more detailed presentation of the CPS activity? I just mentioned want to mention that you also you can open the question and answer panel if you wish, or you can use the chat, or you can raise your electronic hand.
Okay.
I see no questions, so I just pass the floor to Connie for the presentation of the CPS, and then to the apps leader for the more detailed presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Piero. And as you might know, Piero is the director of CPS, and Federico De Bruno, who's here in the audience, and myself are co-directors, and we're going to be introducing other people as we go along. So I want to give a tiny intro. Most of you know, but there are two challenges that characterize the impact of satellite constellations on astronomy. And the first challenge is the exponential growth of the number of satellites in recent years, especially for commercial satellites in low Earth orbit, which you'll hear the term LEO quite a bit. This number has increased to more than fivefold in as many years, basically. About 12,000 of those are active and inactive galaxies, the satellites. This does not include debris at all, and this is at LEO. And an institution called the International Telecommunications Union, which is actually part of the UN, has regulatory filings for about 1.7 million LEO satellites, but they're basically called paper satellites, and they're not all going to come into realization. So in reality, we're looking at probably 100,000, perhaps, might come into fruition in another decade or so, and some people think even greater. That is still a large number, and it'll be definitely impacting our dark and quiet skies. So here today, you're going to hear a lot of mitigation strategies and working together, astronomers and industry, and it's come a long way, and you're going to hear some good things. So concerns, but the concerns are multifold. And there's a growing need, for instance, for space traffic management. And another well-known issue is uncontrollable space debris. And less known problems are the effects of satellites on actually astronomy. So that's what we're focusing in this particular town hall. And so in general, satellites cause bright streaks in optical observations, and they also emit unintended radio frequencies. And so I want to talk a tiny bit about our right to the sky. It is expected that the increase in the number of satellites in the night sky is going to cause an increase in sky brightness itself, the entire sky brightening a bit. Cultures and indigenous peoples' practice of sky traditions will be affected by the increase of sky brightness. And the dark and starry night sky is part of our cultural heritage and is something that we have enjoyed as a species for millennia, until the advent of the streetlight about over 100 years ago. And the sheer enjoyment of a dark and starry night sky will diminish with the increase in numbers of satellites. So, and also basically ground-based light pollution. That's a big factor. So today we're going to be focusing on the impact of satellite constellations on astronomy and mitigation solutions being considered and being carried out. For optical astronomy, a satellite streak makes a small part of an image unusable, and if it's very bright, may distort other areas of the image too, producing artifacts. These impacts several science cases, including the loss of orbit recovery of potentially hazardous asteroids, very, very important, loss of time series for variable stars, confusion with subtle distortions in the shape of distant galaxies by dark matter weak lensing, and then for spectroscopy, the contamination of faint object spectroscopic measurements by reflected sunlight. For radio astronomy, a satellite telecom downlink signal can interfere with sensitive radio astronomy receiver systems. And these kind of studies are like the galaxy evolution over cosmic time, where satellite interference makes it hard to detect the emission lines from the sources. And studies also of the cosmic microwave background, where satellite interference adds to background confusion. So the CPS is a center under the jurisdiction of the International Astronomical Union, and it's hosted by NOIR Lab, which is where I work, and that's the US National Optical Astronomy Observatory, basically, and SKO, where Federico works, which is a renowned network of radio telescopes in Australia and in South Africa. And the three of us, including Piero, are the management team for those institutions. We have a steering committee and also an advisory committee, and we report to the IAU executive committee. So let me briefly introduce you to our hubs. And after one more slide, I'm going to hand it over to the proverbial microphone to one of the hub leads, who will start telling you about their hub in a little more detail. So the SAT hub, whom you'll be hearing about first, is focused on satellite observations, software development, and data analysis to understand problems and find mitigation solutions. And the next hub that you're going to hear from is the policy hub. And I think, well, SAT hub is going to be, the presentation is by Siegfried Egel from the University of Illinois, who's one of the co-leads for SAT hub. And then the policy hub, I believe Tim Stevenson is here to give that presentation, and perhaps maybe Patricia Cooper. And Tim is from SKO, and Patricia has her own consulting firm for satellite constellation. So they're going to talk about studies. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Policy Hub now. So Policy Hub is actually going to be by, so who's here for Policy Hub? Aaron Foley, and he's from the University of British Columbia, and also the co-director of the Outer Space Institute. And he's going to talk about studies of national and international policies and regulations related to the use of space. I'm sorry. So that's the second hub. And then the industry hub is the third hub, industry and technology. And they're going to talk about how they foster collaborations. They're very, very important between astronomy and satellite operators. And finally, we have the Communication Engagement Hub, which is going to be, I think, Jessica Heim, who's one of the co-leads from the University of Southern Queensland. And she's going to talk about the bridge between involved stakeholders and affected communities. And then there are all of you. And as Pierre was saying, you are an incredibly important component to our center. And I don't think we could do it without you. We would like to have more of you involved. So to do that, I've been asked to say just a few words about how you might be able to participate. And I'm sure most of you are affiliated members. And as and organizations can also, if you're associated with an organization that hasn't joined yet, please feel free to ask them, invite them. And each hub has a sub working group that you're going to find a little bit more about, or some of the hubs call them work packages. And this is where your expertise could be very, very well incorporated. We would love to have you join. And so feel free to use the emails that are shown here to contact any of the hubs you might be interested in, and the hub leads will correspond with you. So now I'm going to ask if you have any questions about what we've gone over so far. See if I have any hands. No hands yet. I guess that was clear as mud, huh? Okay. Feel free to ask anything along the way. And again, as Piero said, there's actually 3 ways you can communicate with your electronic hand up, chat, or we have a Q&A at the bottom of your screen that you can click on and use. So Siegfried?
Yeah, thank you so much, Piero and Connie. I do apologize, my voice doesn't always sound like this. I caught the bug while traveling. It's still a thing, unfortunately. So, my name is Siegfried Egger. I have the pleasure of being a co-lead of the SET Hub, together with Meredith Rawls at the University of Washington and Mike Peel at the Imperial College London. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And together, next slide, please. Thank you. Together, we are sort of trying to gather, analyze, and share data of satellites with the help of all volunteers, many of which I see here who are already working with us. So thank you so much for joining today. And thank you for all you're doing. Without you, this hub would not exist. And we are really relying very heavily on your contributions. And if you are new to the CPS, I can just encourage you to ping us, join our channel. We are very active on Slack, and see where you would like to contribute. It's a very vibrant and very active culture that we have here. And as you will hopefully see in a few slides, we really are making progress toward making sure that satellite constellation operators know what to do and astronomers know what to expect. So our main tasks are, as I was pointing out already, to find volunteers to help us observe satellites. That can be visual observations, that can be observations with dedicated astronomy equipment. And the goal is twofold. So the first thing is to really make sure that we know what specific satellites look like when they are on the sky. That is the main purpose. And the second main purpose is to be able to take that data and then model for future reference what the impact of more satellites would be. Because at the moment, we are trying to really sort of understand what the impact of individual fields of astronomy is, and we are trying at the same time to get as much data as possible to help us really forward model where the satellites are going to be on the sky and how bright these satellites are going to be. And I'm not only talking in optical, we are also looking at radio interference. And to this end, to make sure that we have the tools once we know how bright satellites are and once we know what the interference pattern looks like, to also be able to accurately predict what this would look like on the sky, what this would look like on your device. And for this, we evidently need your help. If you want to have something that is quite specific to your science case, specific to your instrument, then please come talk to us, help us. We have a few sort of standard satellites that you can observe where we can try to figure out how to best model what's going to happen when all the constellations are complete on the sky. And I want to make sure that you understand that we are not doing this in isolation. We have very, very good connections with colleagues from satellite constellation operators, some of which are members of the CPS. And I want to give a shout out also to our partners from industry. They have been very good to us so far. We have a mostly fruitful collaboration. And this is really a two-way street. And so I would also, again, like to acknowledge their contribution to our effort here, because only together can we solve this issue. Most of the tools that we are developing are, to serve these two purposes. Sort of the one is to collect and help distribute satellite data. We will see in a slide or so what kind of tools we have there, and that requires software development and data repositories as well. And so again, I would like to thank our center leading partners, the NOAA Lab and SKAO, to help us with FTEs and with really technical resources to allow us to develop these tools and share data with everybody for free around the globe. So the other thing I really want to point out is that we are a volunteer organization, and that means without your help, SetHub is simply not going to work. And if you feel that you have some resources, some observation time, some expertise in developing some software, even if it's just sort of a selfish reason to make sure you understand how your science case is affected, please do reach out to us. We really need your input, and we're looking forward to working with you. Next slide, please, Connie. So I went through most of this already, just to give you a sort of more detailed view of what kind of tools we are developing and what kind of tools we are expecting to have ready soonish if they aren't ready already. So you can see that under the development of mitigation tools for astronomers, most of these services, they are already active and you can use them. If you're interested, we are doing only open source development, so everything we do is very transparent and for you to to check. These services are intended to run online so that you can use them through APIs or through some convenient Python front ends, so that you can really make use of to your best of your time and not having to reinvent the wheel if you want to help and you want to contribute. And so some of these services are SatChecker, which is an ephemeris service for satellites, where you can basically say, I would like to observe this and that satellite. Is it going to be observable from my location? So there's a geolocation attached to that, and it will tell you exactly where where a given satellite is going to pop up, based on where you are situated, and when it's observable. It's even going to tell you whether it's illuminated or not. So this is a very, very nice service. There's also the satellite constellation repository, because when you observe your satellite, it would be really, really kind of you to share that data. You don't have to do that immediately, but we encourage people to do this on a relatively short time scale so that other people can also have access to that data. And we have a really, really nice repository that's called SCORE. So the link to SCORE is score.cps.iau.org, where current observations are being stored, and there's also some elementary light curves that you can see when you click on the individual satellites. So this is something that has been developed in collaboration with NOAA Lab, and it is such a nice thing where you can basically take your observations, you submit them through CSV. It's a very convenient process, and then the observations become accessible to everybody, and anybody who wants to do their own analysis based on that data, feel free to just take that data. There are a few rules of acknowledging observers and so on. So it's not like when you submit your data, like you will never be mentioned again. So we really encourage people to play nice and to make sure that the people who observe and give us this data are acknowledged in the process. But it's a very powerful database that we are and have already been starting to launch now. And thank you to those of you who already contributed. I know I've seen many of you already here, so thank you so much. Please keep doing a great work. I think you can see that this is going to be quite a substantial step forward. One of the services that we are currently developing that is in alpha testing is a field of view service, where you can basically where we can basically tell you, like, if you want to observe a certain field of view or a certain patch on the sky at a given time, what kind of satellites do we expect to cross that field of view. That is an F-sponsored work that is currently ongoing. There is an alpha version. We will inform you, when this is really ready to be released. If you're interested, just ping any of the setup leads. We can give you sort of access to the alpha version. And last but not least, of course, we are also modeling the impact of radio astronomy with Scepter. That is something that has been developed at the SKAO. It's also very, very powerful software, but none of these things they are perfect. So if you feel like you want to contribute something, if you feel something is missing, please do let us know. Again, like we are not only here to exchange data, but also to really develop those tools to push them forward. Everything is open source. So if you feel like you want to contribute, like some of you already do, please make sure that this is something that is available. And one thing that's not mentioned here is SOPP, which is a service that has been developed by our colleagues at CU Boulder and the West Coast. That is a Python library that basically does what SetChecker API is doing online, where you can literally download the software if you don't have internet access. This is also something that was kindly shared by Kevin and et al. This is also going to be available, and maybe Kevin can say a few words later on when we are done with this session here about that. So the important thing is that we're trying to coordinate and mitigate the mitigation efforts with all stakeholders. So if you are an industry partner who's joined us now, please make sure that you also reach out to us. And Industry Hub is going to tell you a little more of how to go about this. Last slide, please. And so you see that we are not just sort of collecting data and hoarding data. We have a case study where our observing campaigns really made a difference. So again, like these observing campaigns, they are led by you. They are led by the community. And we had one that was done about 2 years ago when AST Space Mobile launched their BlueWalker 3 constellation prototype. And so we reached out to them again. And since this was quite a bright satellite because of the way that they are designing their phased array, which was 64 square meters here, we did an observation campaign. We kind of shared the data with them and eventually published the data. And this really helped, like sort of kickstarting a more intense dialogue, I think. And while it's sometimes hard to get to operators, during the satellite design process, we are very proud to say that we are, in active collaboration, and we are working with them to make sure that even if the design, kind of stays the same, at least we will have some other ways of mitigating some of the brightness. For instance, changing attitudes and making sure that the reflected light doesn't necessarily go to really some of the big observatories. And of course, there are also efforts in radio astronomy where people are actively investigating, what the footprints look like of all of these satellites on the ground for radio astronomy, and then trying to assess what these little side lobes look like and what the interference really looks like from the radio side. With that, I thank you so much for your attention, and I'll head off to Industry Hub. If there are any questions, Kevin, if you want to say something about SOPP, that would be a good time.
Thank you, Siegfried. I'll make this quick because we'll branch to the other hub leads. Kevin Gifford, University of Colorado at Boulder. I've been working with the SAT hub leads, Meredith, Connie, Siegfried, and then the software lead, Michelle Dadaget. And we are, certainly looking to collaborate with SAT hub. Very quickly, SOPP is another utility that's complementary to SatChecker. And, we have the HCRO, and we also have OVRO Observatory that Greg Helberg, who is online. And we've been using SOPP to predict satellite RF interference to those observations. Thank you on the meeting. I was just going to look at my audio. I'll just make this quick, you guys. So with us, with all the that project has actually been awarded. It should have started September 1st, right? FY 2024 funds, and we're just finishing up negotiation with the government. It's a government MITRE deal that's slowing things down. So I'll stop there. We plan on closely collaborating with SatHub and SatChecker and doing a lot of observations to predict RF interference from satellites, whether they're transmitting downlink or it's unintended emissions as they come over RA facilities. I'll stop there. Thank you, Siegfried, for letting me say something. Bye.
Thank you very much. Again, if you have questions, please just raise your hand. We'll be happy to take some questions now or when the presentations are done. Thank you. Thanks.
Well,
Uh,
if there are, oh, go ahead,
Go
Piero.
ahead, go ahead, Connie.
Are there any further questions? I don't see. Oh, okay,
Well,
there's a
there were
comment.
comments in the chat,
see.
Connie,
I see.
that might be worth mentioning.
Yeah.
There is
Let's,
an interest raised by Paul Daniels and also Greg, that the issue of the contamination of the upper atmosphere is becoming an important problem, and so we certainly will follow that up. We as a CPS are essentially interested in the impact of that on astronomical observation, of course, but obviously that issue has much more diverse implication for the long-term sustainability of our outer space. So it's quite important that at least on the astronomical side, we keep monitoring what is happening up there.
yes, thank you. And there's another, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of
Both-
course. I mean, there is
Sol-
obviously there is a problem of the volume of the amount of the, but keep in mind that maintaining the operativity of a large constellation means that the satellite have to be continuously replaced because since they are operating in low orbit, they will decay continuously. And so we are, I mean, to maintain the operation, we are forever injecting in the upper atmosphere the material by which these satellites are composed. And the long-term effect on that, both on astronomy and in general on the atmosphere, has to be studied carefully now.
Okay. So Siegfried's also put in the sat checker link if anyone's interested in that. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to pass it over to our next set of speakers, which is from the Industry and Technology Hub. Is that Tim?
Indeed it is. Thank you, Connie. I'm Tim Stevenson. I'm the Director of Assurance at the SKA Observatory. For those that you don't know, the SK Observatory is an intergovernmental organization with now 12 member states. We like to say that in those 12 member states are 40% of the world's astronomers. Of course, very few of them are radio astronomers, but we have a duty as a global organization to represent astronomy in general, and that's the reason why we're co-sponsoring the CPS and investing fairly heavily in the activity. So I'm here to talk about the Industry and Technology Hub. The three pictures you've got on the screen at the moment, I'm the ugly one in the middle. Patricia Cooper is also in the call, and Chris Hofer from Amazon Kuiper gave the equivalent of this talk at the earlier session today. Patricia is the brains behind the I&T Hub. Her industry connections are unrivaled, and we benefit very much from those connections in fostering the relationships that Siegfried has referred to. I'm very grateful to Siegfried to already state how valuable good bandwidth connections, if I make a terrible pun, to industry are in this activity, and making sure that there is deep understanding on both sides. We make our contribution in the I&T Hub, as I'll go through the next 3 slides. So Connie, if you could advance it, people stop looking at my face. So the idea is to foster collaboration between the communities and to continue to make outreach to industry to raise an awareness and keep the flow of partners coming in from industry into the forums that we've created for the I&T Hub. Raising awareness was very critical. I'll just give you the famous radio astronomy example. When talking to industry about the problem that there is incompatibility between low Earth orbit operations for telecom systems and other systems and radio astronomy, they said, well, but the ITU protects you. You've got protected bands. You must be okay. So we had to explain why that wasn't the case. And the optical problem to them was originally quite a surprise. So we needed to mutually educate, because it works both ways. They have to learn about astronomy and we have to learn about their situation. So it's a continuous process. And the key element really is to develop the tools and resources to help familiarize companies with the concerns and also to get them to adopt best practice. And that's done by pooling. They can't necessarily very effectively come up with their own solutions in isolation. And what's happening is there's a great deal of sharing of solutions amongst the industry players that we're in contact with. We want to promote ongoing R&D. Now, at the moment, most of it has actually happened within projects. They've spent money in developing solutions, in particular to the reflectivity problem. And we want to expand that into the wider domain. In other words, R&D organizations that are not connected with either astronomy or with the telecoms industry, developing, in particular, sophisticated non-reflective materials. But they have to end up with solutions which are affordable and accessible to all parties. They can't be necessarily proprietary, or if they are proprietary, they need to be inexpensive. And of course, the membership of the INT hub specifically is of no cost to satellite stakeholders, so they've got no excuse to show up. Now, Sigrid has emphasized the benefits so far and what has been achieved so far by what one can argue to be bilateral relationships in organizing observing campaigns and so on. But within the INT hub, it's multilateral within industry. We're getting industry to talk to each other about sharing solutions. So the outcomes so far to date are that we've got those operators who are already deploying solutions or attempts at solutions. The list is on the slide. They're already within the tent of the INT hub. And more widely, you can get to industry more widely by talking to the industry associations. The example given on the slide is the GSOA. And they are already engaged in having their own sort of study activities going on, looking as an association to the problems. Can you move the slide on, please, Connie? So the simple thing is for furtherance of the mitigations for these low Earth orbit and mid-Earth orbit systems, is to get the operators on board, the manufacturer on board, which we want to extend our reach to get those companies that actually literally have R&D in-house, which can come up with these solutions, and other stakeholders, for instance, antenna manufacturers for the radio astronomy phenomenon, get them on board as well to get them to understand the problem, and to collaborate in the hub amongst themselves to develop and adopt solutions, and provide under the inform header a flow of references so that they can see what evidence is being documented in the public domain and sometimes in the private domain regarding the technical concerns. In other words, where the astronomical community is publishing observations and saying we're seeing not just brightness, but variation in brightness, unpredictable brightness variations, and so forth, they get a list of definitive references which they can go and look at, the raw data that they need to react to, and to identify the available tools and resources, get them to be informed on those resources by a little bit of reading, and to facilitate dialogue in exchange amongst the industry stakeholders. That's absolutely critical because we think there's lots of multipliers operating. Connie, the next slide. I think this should be the last slide. Now, it's very important to try and not only maintain this sort of broadband wide channel into industry, but we think also that it's a valuable idea for industry to have a single individual to whom they can refer to get possibly a sort of, a representative astronomical community reaction to something they might think of doing. So Patricia came up with the concept of astronomer guides. So we now have, I think, 6 pairings of an astronomer who is capable of representing an astronomical viewpoint on potential mitigations being planned by operators and manufacturers, have those people have this very strong connection with individual operators to help them with that advice in the first instance. And that's absolutely critical. You can't simply educate the operators and the manufacturers to the point where they automatically understand the astronomer's point of view. They have a genuine astronomer that they could call to get a genuine perspective on things that they plan. So it really improves the understanding of their proposals and gives them a much deeper insight than they would get by almost any other means. So that's a quick run through of what the INT Hub does. I think I've kind of emphasized all the things we need to say. We're trying to expand the mitigations. We're also trying to expand the predictive tools. Now, the predictive tools here I'm talking about are predictive tools that operators and manufacturers can use to predict their brightness, in particular, predict their brightness. Now, that's a geometrical model, and it's a reflectance model, and it's an operating model, because obviously some of these mitigations involve attitude changes and so forth. We want to expand our recruitment to beyond operators to manufacturers, technology companies, subsystem suppliers, and so on, because they're all relevant, and many of them have got R&D budgets which they can deploy to improve things. We're only 5 years in to the meeting of the communities to solve this problem. 5 years is not a long time, and there've only been limited opportunities to fly solutions. So it's an ongoing process, as I've described, and there will be further improvements to the mitigations. And the ultimate goal is affordable solutions. So that's what we're trying to achieve within the INT Hub by getting industry, pretty much the principal idea is to get industry to talk to each other and refer appropriately to the astronomical community for feedback on what they're proposing to address this problem. I'll stop there.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. There is one question so far in the chat, and they're asking, this is from Raymond Wagner, and he's asking, will the guides keep sharing results along the way? What dialogues, what works, etc.?
At the moment, they're kind of something of a diode. They are associated with the operator, listening to the operator and giving the operator feedback. They're not mandated to report into the community until that operator is convinced that what they are proposing from an astronomical community perspective is good news. I think everyone in the astronomical community needs to understand that the INT Hub is very, very different. The participants from the industry side in the INT Hub are not free to operate. We have many members who show up to our meetings who can't speak for their companies publicly. They're there to find out, and they're there to mull on the problem, and they're there to take back what they learn to the company, who will then make a response which will then become public when they feel able to and they're ready. So the feedback route through the astronomer guides to the astronomical community is not that great. It's more likely that the feedback will come from the specific industry player having consulted with their astronomer guide.
Very good. So are there any other questions from our audience here, please? Okay, there's one now from Alex Borloff. There's a general question to CPS. Is there any plan to organize a work in progress publication CPS wiki? It would be very useful to coordinate. I'm sorry, someone talking? Okay, so he says it'll be very useful to coordinate papers with other teams to avoid duplication efforts or scientific gaps. I think that's a good solution. I think that's a good idea. What do you think, Piero or Federico?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. We will look into that, certainly. You know, it's part of our effort to have a more channel of communication with the community and engaging them in what we are doing. So anything that goes in that direction is will be useful.
And then there's
I mean,
another
there's one
question.
question there for me, I think.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it. So Kevin McLeod has asked if there's been a discussion in INT about solutions for more rapid deorbiting of post-mission satellites.
Great question. And I think it's a great question because one of the members of the technical advisory group within the INT hub is actually, that's their business. But in pursuing their business, which is effectively an atmospheric sail, which is deployed to increase massively the drag of a spacecraft, to encourage it to re-enter, they are a member. And these massive sails, of course, are reflective. So they're worried now about the reflective issue of their re-entry systems. But yeah, so the answer is, that was a long answer. The short answer is yes.
That was a good question. Any other questions? I see Patricia's hand is up. What's up, Patricia? Go ahead.
I was just going to expand on that. As the satellites come lower, there are really sort of two categories of operators. All the communication satellite operators are propulsive. They have the ability to maneuver, and all of them are actively deorbiting at the end of life. The international standard is still 25 years for deorbit post-mission. The US, through the FCC, has started to require 5-year for missions under 2,000 kilometers. But there are still quite a few systems. Many of them are research and development satellites. A lot of the sort of Earth observing systems are not maneuverable. They don't have onboard propulsion. So their ability to deorbit, to accelerate deorbit, is limited because they don't, it's not an active, propulsive deorbit. But I think there's a lot more focus on it, and it'd be interesting to hear what interest underlies that question, what you think is the current state of timing, and what you think it would be useful from an astronomy perspective, or from even from an ecosystem perspective, to have faster deorbits. I think there's a community that's very active in it, and there's another community that has not invested in maneuverability, and so their ability to accelerate deorbit beyond passive deorbit is limited.
Very good. There is an addendum to Alex Borlaug's question about in-progress work being reported, and SatHub, Siegfried from SatHub has said that they have at least a working group index, and he's given a link to it. So if anyone's interested. All right. Oh, we have another question. It just came in. Regarding the label Dark and Quiet Skies, do you collaborate with the International Dark Sky Association, which is now called Dark Sky International, by the way? If so, on what level do you focus on artificial light at night? Do you coordinate your activities on Allen with other organizations? If so, which ones, please? Ruskin Hartley, and I think IDA are members of CPS, and we don't literally we're only focused on satellite constellations, but to the extent now that the debris there's a potential for the debris to actually brighten our night sky. We're thinking of actually extending our work in that area, but we have not come to any conclusion. And for any more detail, I hand this question over to Piero.
Yeah, and certainly the IAU in general is also concerned about Allen, the artificial light at night, and they have a specific group working on that. The CPS was created specifically, as Connie said, to deal with the impact or interference caused to astronomy and to the visibility of the night sky by the constellations. So we have a very clear mission which is confined to that. However, let me say that because we are raising this problem at the level of the United Nations in the Committee for the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, from the point of view of the interference of the satellite constellation, the point is that the the merit of preserving the visibility of the astronomical sky by all type of interference is now very high in the visibility of the United Nations. Although we are concentrating on the impact of the satellite, we are also carry on the fact that we have to protect astronomy. And so the visibility of the protection also from the light pollution from ground sources is now becoming quite clear to all the delegation that participate in the discussion of the COPOS, of the Committee for the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. So in a sense, the additional problem that we are facing with the satellite constellation had the positive effect that we are now, the cause of the protection of astronomy is now quite visible at the international level, much more than what it was in the past.
Okay, so there's another interesting comment by Paul Daniels. I invite people to read it. And if there are any other questions, I'm looking both at the electronic hands, I'm looking at the chat, and okay. Let's see. No, I don't have any questions that are open in the Q&A. So, wait. Okay, there's one question from Ryan Laird. It's a very long one. I think it might be a comment, but it's a question. What key lessons have you learned about engagement with satellite operators, policymakers, and regulators that can help prevent silos and foster better interaction between the Sat Hub, Industry and Technology Hub, Community Engagement Hub, and Policy Hub? What core challenges have you faced in ensuring effective collaboration across these hubs, and how can these insights help ensure more integrated and cohesive strategies moving forward? Piero, would you like to tackle that?
No, sorry, I was following another question. Where I couldn't find that.
If you hit the Q&A button, it's the only question that's in the Q&A right now.
I can answer on the part of the INT hub. That's why the INT hub exists, to demolish silos. Right. And I think we've done rather well, but clearly there's more to be done.
Yeah, and also if any of the hubs want to answer that, that'd be great too. But I can tell you from a management point of view or a facilitator's point of view that the hubs do talk to each other quite frequently and collaborating on projects with each other to make things possible. And so I have no fear that things are not working well. They're working very well. But if anyone else from any of the other hubs wants to speak to this, you're more than welcome.
If I may, Connie, I think
Yes.
the question was quite long and no one is able to see it, read it. Would it be possible to put it in the chat?
Oh, I didn't realize you can't read it.
For some reason, no one can see it.
Yeah, for some reason also I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, maybe it was shared directly to you on the chat. I don't know.
Yeah, it should be public. I made it public, but it didn't work. So why don't you look at the chat right now? There's the question. Oh, wait, did I not hit the button? There we go.
Not
All right,
yet.
there's the question.
There it is.
Oh, I see. Well, that's certainly quite interesting question. What I can say is that certainly in the interaction with the companies and operators, we learn a lot in the sense that our, mindset of the astronomical community is quite different from the way satellite operator, particularly private operator, are operating. So we had to adapt ourselves in the interaction. And at the beginning, it was indeed a steep learning path to create mutual confidence so that we can find possibility of speaking and talking and and collaborating. I think that we have now reached a reasonable level of interaction, and particularly with the, as team has mentioned, the astronomer guide. And as he said, is something that has to treat it very carefully if we want to continue to have this type of a collaboration. So it's something that we have learned, and it is useful. Sometime it will be useful to even put in writing what we have learned, and that has also helped a lot to internally to have our hubs to discuss and collaborate. In particular, as you will see in a moment when the community engagement will be displayed, there is a lot of interaction between that hub and the industry and technology hub, because it's quite important to channel the information to the society in a proper way, which maintain the interaction and the possibility of collaborating with the companies. But I see Federico.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Piero. Just shortly, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So shortly, I think you covered very well the interaction with industry. I would just like to also mention that the interaction with policymakers and regulators is also a different kind of beast that we are trying to navigate in the CPS. And it's also something we have learned a lot, I think. And the same thing that Piero just said also applies, right? We started in the IAU and also at SKO, participating in different of these forums like COPWOS and ITU. You will hear more about that later with the Policy Hub. And the way to approach those particular forums or those particular regulators, it's very different than the way we normally work in science or astronomy. And that was also something that we have learned, and I think it's an added value that the CPS have, that we have very experienced people that can work in these different forums, right? Like industry and also policy and all of this. So that's a very good added value from the CPS.
And there's also a campaign that is being started, and on a position statement that policy had a lot to do with, and the community engagement, we call CE, is going to help them start a campaign to make it more widely known. So I think Jessica will talk about that. So I see a hand up from Patricia.
Yeah, I just wanted to characterize a little bit some of the approaches that we've had to bridge, and even in the most basic levels. I think in the academic community, there's a very collaborative, very sort of open source approach to problem solving. But in this instance of industry, these projects are in some cases competing, in many cases in a very sensitive position with regard to either regulators and getting licensed, or with respect to investors and financing. And so they have a much more proprietary approach to information. And I think one bridge that we've had to do is to respect that those two communities have different approaches to sharing information. And then the other is, I would just say that I've talked to literally hundreds of companies about this, and organizations. And I would say that the effort to raise awareness has been very successful, and that I have yet to run into a company that is not willing to be able to engage in this. Where they are in their project, where they are in their kind of maturity as a company, and their available resources really varies. And this is why we're so focused in the Industry and Technology Hub about making as many options of mitigations available that are accessible, so that everyone who's willing has a path to be part of a mitigation.
Okay. I'm sorry, but due to time, I'd like to give enough time to the last two hubs. So if you don't mind, I'd like to hand the reins over to Jessica to start. and she's going to be talking on behalf of the Community Engagement Hub. Jessica?
Okay, great. And you can, okay, so I'm Jessica Heim and I co-lead the Community Engagement Hub along with John Barentine. And we can go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Okay, so what is our hub? It's basically a bridge between people who are inside of CPS and everybody else who's interested in the night sky. So our mission is pretty much twofold. One is we're working on creating and distributing resources to improve people's understanding of these issues, because when we first started out, and to help get more engagement with people, we found that so many people weren't really that informed on the issue. They knew something about it, but they didn't know a great deal. And they're like, I don't know enough to really have an informed opinion. You know, can you give me some educational resources so I can understand it better and make up my mind what I think about it? So that's how we've come to be focusing a lot on educational materials in our work. And then we also engage people in discussion and dialogue through community fora, such as we have several town halls planned for the coming year. And so we also work to raise awareness of views from broader communities about these issues, because when this whole dialogue started up between satellite operators and professional astronomers, like that was the initial conversation. And then over time, the conversation got broader to realize, okay, well, there's other people who look at the night sky who aren't necessarily professional astronomers, but they are very much interested in these issues and they have their own perspectives. And so the CE Community Engagement Hub, we try to work a lot to ensure that more perspectives are encouraged and discussed and incorporated into thinking about these issues. So we look at broader aspects of these topics. You can go to the next slide, Connie. So examples of, you know, who does community engagement engage with? Obviously, we've been focusing a lot on engaging with professional astronomers, because outside of the people who are already very involved with CPS activities or are doing research on this, there are a lot of people in the professional astronomical community who don't know a great deal about this. So we're trying to engage with them so they understand more about these issues and can participate in ways that are meaningful to them. Obviously, also amateur astronomers, people who are involved with astropourism, people throughout the entire planet, cultures, every community on the planet historically has had a relationship to the sky. And so that's an important aspect of perspectives on these issues. The broader public, in theory, are constituencies is like everybody on the planet, because everybody to some extent is affected by these issues, whether they're focused directly on them or not. And people who casually look at the sky, landscape astrophotographers in particular, tend to be very impacted by the increase in constellation satellites in their images. We can move on to the next slide. So one example case study of educational materials that we've created thus far is SatCons 101, and that's a series of short 8 learning video modules that are available on the CPS website. And each one is a short video talking about a different aspect of this issue. So everything from the basics of, okay, how are satellites designed? Like, so people really understand the very basics of this, and then a little bit of some of the different impacts that these satellites are currently having on the night sky, potential mitigations, and just kind of, so once people have gone through this, they've got a basic understanding of the issues where they can go into more depth later on if they'd like. And it's accessible for the general public. You don't have to be a professional astronomer to understand the content in these slides. It's meant to be very clearly expressed. We can go on to the next slide, Connie. And so then going forward, what is the CE Hub working on now? So one of the things that we've worked on over the last half year or so is developing a strategic communication plan so we are more effective in our communications. So we went through an exercise where we were trying to better understand, well, who are the people we communicate with? You know, how do they receive information? How might this affect them? And just trying to understand the people we interact with a little bit better so we can have more effective communications with them. And we worked through the other hub leads and the management team to create this set of, you know, what are the key messages? So we're, you know, all on the same page about, you know, okay, what is our understanding? What are we trying to communicate? So we're not inadvertently working at cross purposes among hubs, that we're, you know, having a consistent messaging and we're making sense And then we also work to create a plan to communicate these ideas through different methods in the coming year. You can go on to the next slide, Connie. And one thing we're also doing is to work to create additional educational content. So as I mentioned, we're planning to have at least 3 community engagement town hall meetings in 2025. And our structure for that is to have an educational lecture by an expert in the field on some aspect of some facet of these issues, and then followed by Q&A and broader discussion. We've been looking at the idea of creating a planetarium show on this. If anybody is interested in that, somebody who has background and experience in creating planetarium shows, we would really like to talk to you. We'd like to set up a working group to work on this. And thus far, we've just been, having a little bit of challenge trying to get enough people who have a background in this. We've had a lot of people who are like, well, that's really cool. That's a great idea. But we need to have people with more expertise in doing planetarium shows so we can get an idea of something put together, so we could put together a budget proposal, so we could look for funding and that type of thing. So that's one thing we would really like to see happen. If we're able to get the resources and people to help put that together, that would be a really great way to inform a lot more people in the general public about these issues, because lots of people go to planetarium shows. We're also working on creating promotional material supporting the CPS position statement, and I'll talk more about that on another slide. And we're also looking for help with translations of key materials. And so like our SATCONS 101 curriculum and things like that, we'd like to do at least the 6 UN official languages. But if you have expertise in your community and you know something about this topic and you have the fluency in another language, please reach out to our hub to work on coordinating with us if you'd like to help with some of the translations, because that would really help us, because we don't want to have our materials only available to people in English. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And additional things we're doing, working to continue to build relationships and foster dialogue with people. So the town halls are definitely one way we're striving to have more interaction with our membership. We're working to identify more organizations that we might want to be able to collaborate with, and just trying to make connections between organizations so we can partner together to help each other on these issues. So that's one thing that we're really seeking to build more in the coming year. And also one of the things we're really excited about is engaging the Community Engagement Hub members in participating in our position statement campaign. And that kind of goes into the next slide. Why don't you bring that one up, Connie? So this is the position statement that came out of work from the Policy Hub. And so what we're doing in the CE Hub is working to help raise the members' awareness of these recommendations that CPS has endorsed. And we're also creating materials that are more condensed than the full position statement is kind of long. Basically, we're taking recommendations from the last 2 pages, creating some documents that are very user-friendly for people to understand. And so if this is something that you feel strongly about and you think these are good ideas, that we're providing materials for you, so then you can go to your national delegations and say, oh, this is something you should be thinking about, in our national legislation, so that this becomes a way for us to help our members to be able to advocate more effectively for their individual countries, to be thinking more seriously about these issues, and so that they can raise awareness of what the best practices are and being able to implement them more effectively. So I think that's kind of the gist of what we're doing, and we welcome your feedback and questions and everything. So I think I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Jessica. That was great. Are there any questions for Jessica? So you can put them in chat or the Q&A, or you can hand raise electronically. Or just go like this, whatever you'd like to do. So, okay, I have one. Oh, here, no, that's something else. I'm looking in the chat, just a minute, sorry. I don't see anything that pertains to you, Jessica.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm here, and there's the email address, so
yeah, and we'll
see you later.
That's right. And I put the email address actually in the chat already.
Great.
So. All right. If there are no questions, I'm going to go on to the next hub, and that's the policy hub. And here to give us an overview is Aaron Boley, one of the two co-leads. Aaron?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Policy Hub. Thank you to everybody who's here to listen. My name's Aaron Boley. I'm an astronomer at the University of British Columbia. I also co-direct the Outer Space Institute. I have the privilege of working with Juliana, who works in space law and policy, is a phenomenal person, cannot be here right now. I also had the privilege of working with an absolute fantastic team of individuals through the Policy Hub. And I'm not going to be able to name absolutely everyone throughout this process. There are a couple names that I do want to highlight here very quickly. So we have both Richard Green and Andrew Williams, who were former Policy Hubs, and a lot of the work that we're going to be talking about today has actually come out of things that they've done. It's a big, big team effort. And so it's hard to assign just one particular person to any given thing. But I do want to mention those names. Yana Yakushina is here, as well as Anne-Sophie, Carmen, and Hilding, and let's see here, and Tamara. Yes, you're all here, part of the Work Package 2 team, which I will talk about in a moment, with Yana leading one of the components of that. Okay. Policy is about possibilities. And that's what we're exploring within this hub. We do conduct research into what the existing policies are, as well as their legal underpinnings. We raise awareness of requirements of astronomy to policymakers and within space circles. We do want to coordinate work among multiple levels, so national societies, observatories, and so forth, and we do advise them the IAU. I'll go into a little bit more about that distinction I'm trying to make in just another slide or two. We do want to, through all these processes, develop better regulation, not necessarily more regulation, just a distinction there. It might mean more regulation, or it might just mean changing the way that we do things. And we also want to identify threats and future opportunities. Now, within the astronomy community, if you look to the right with the strategic outcomes, we want to make sure that the astronomy community does have an aligned message. That doesn't mean we can not dissent, or we have different voices, different ideas that are brought up, but we do want to try to have core messages that we take forward. And with that, we want to be able to produce policy outputs that contribute to changing that policy, the policy, shaping policies in the way that we want to see. Now, these policies ultimately emerge from national regulations and national policies with international guidelines and international obligations, and then you have multiple levels within the governance structure. All of that is working together. And so there are many opportunities to use the combination of national laws, guidelines, best practices as a way to address the problem. And we want to make sure that industry is aware of issues and solutions, and that policymakers are also aware of these issues and of solutions. And again, this is a big, big team effort, and it requires lots of dialogue. Next slide, please. Some of the first outputs of the Policy Hub are shown here. We have various work packages. Work package 1 was formalizing the initial position of the CPS based on previous workshops and the initial work. The discussion paper was already shown by Jessica with the QR code, and I put a link directly into the chat. I'm also putting links into the chat for the work package 2 work. And so this was a tremendous effort that was done to look at national laws and policies concerning the use and exploration of outer space, as well as exploring things such as the international landscape. You can see the author list there for all those who could contribute, who did contribute, and really it was an amazing project. And I thank all of you online who did that. Next slide, please. Additional things that have happened is that we've published consolidated recommendations. Again, these are the series of recommendations that have come out of the initial body of work among the CPS as a whole, as well as the connected activities. And that is just done in a way that tries to streamline everything. It's available on the CPS website. Please take a look if you've not already. One of the things that we do try to do, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, is that while we don't directly submit something to any given regulatory body or anything like that, what we do at the Policy Hub is that we will advise the IAU on responses. And so there are multiple calls, whether it's through, in the US, the FCC, Canada, Environment Industry, it's a long acronym. There are multiple components. We also had the Kenya Space Agency recently had a call, and actually that was a collaboration. Then it was brought to our attention through the Community Engagement Hub. The EU recently had a call. The point is that governments throughout the world are requesting consultation through various agencies and mechanisms. And one of the things that the IAU can do is just put forward a response that just lays out considerations that the IAU would like to see for astronomy in a very general sense. And one of the things that we try to do in the Policy Hub is advise the IAU on the way to do that. We've also supported IAU responses at the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. This is the major international forum in which states gather to discuss activities in space. And so, for example, one of the things that the IAU is putting forward in its position based on quite a bit of research that has been done throughout the Policy Hub, as well as within the associated conferences and so forth, is to put forth a proposition that astronomy is the use and exploration of outer space, or certainly the exploration of outer space. And that's a position the IAU is putting forward in order to be debated in international fora. And another thing that was related to that is that we try to support the IAU in positions and resolutions, such as the providing input into Resolution 1, 2024. Again, it was a large, there were many people involved in that, and we just provided input. And I'm very pleased with what happened with Resolution 1, 2024, because it provides then an opportunity for astronomers everywhere to use that resolution to help advocate for positions, or at least to make positions clear, such as the Earth's considerations for an Earth space system, the astronomy being the exploration of outer space, making protection of dark and quiet skies a consideration for all IAU members, and to advocate those positions and that protection to national, to the appropriate national groups within their communities. So I'm very, I see a lot of opportunities with this resolution. If you've not looked at it, please take a look. Next slide, please. There are a lot of other kind of regional activities that are going on. Some things that I want to highlight here, though, is that what we are seeing happening, and it's started to emerge organically, and it's something that at the Policy Hub we're definitely running with, is that dark and quiet skies, and I believe rightfully so, is being linked with space sustainability in a broader sense. And so some of the things that we're seeing is work on space debris and other associated effects are being directly tied to dark and quiet skies as one of the pillars. And we've seen that in the Zero Debris Charter, Earth Space Sustainability Initiative as an example, and these are being discussed widely. And it is wonderful to see things such as certainly operational and safety considerations with orbital debris, casualty risks on the ground from re-entering debris, but we're also then seeing that as part of that discussion, we have to think about dark and quiet skies. Next slide, please. There are lots of activities that are happening, not just because of the Policy Hub, but within this bigger community that we see all these different actions happening. There's a lot of kind of resonances that are being hit. And so independent of the Policy Hub, directly, Korean Astronomical Society has been doing quite a bit of work, both releasing a statement on dark and quiet skies, talking to the space agency, and then hosting meetings. Next slide, please. And in that kind of just in that vein, we can look at what is happening internationally. And one of the big, I think, accomplishments that we've seen for the dark and quiet skies community as a whole is the addition of the 5-year agenda item to the scientific and technical subcommittee. So at that UN committee on the peaceful uses of outer space, the big international forum where operations in space are discussed, there are 2 subcommittees, the legal subcommittee and the science and technical subcommittee. And having this in the science and technical subcommittee gives us the opportunity, as well as other states, and then people providing input to the delegations, to be able to discuss how dark and quiet skies fits into our use and exploration of outer space. And so this is incredible, particularly for an organization or an entity really that works on consensus in very difficult geopolitical times. So having this on there is quite amazing. And part of that is fostered through this group of friends. And so this is then a mechanism or a group within COPUOS of states who are committed to talking about dark and quiet skies. And they receive input then from other actors, both from industry, from academics, from non-governmental organizations. So it's a way to broaden that tent and have these discussions at COPUOS. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide, please. This work ends up really, so we've talked about work that the Policy Hub does, that groups do in the greater sphere of dark and quiet skies, but there's a lot that happens when we all collaborate. And so there's the space law consultation, and the Policy Hub worked with the European Astronomical Society as well as the Committee on Radio Astronomy Frequencies in Europe in order to put forward a set of recommendations. And this led to a lot of additional responses from national societies and observatories that really amplified that voice. Next slide, please. The final thing that I want to leave you with is that we do have a working group that is ongoing at the moment. Actually, I'm going to make another comment, one that's not on the slide, but for this particular slide, we have the Future Space Technologies Working Group, and this is led by Victoria Kompowski, who's on the call. Thank you, Victoria. What we would like to have for this is to have two independent external reviewers to look at the work to identify gaps in the work. These external reviewers are not intended to be new members of the working group. However, their work will certainly be acknowledged as a result of that, but we want to keep that independent, and this will just to provide some an outside picture of how that of what is included in the work, what is possibly missed, how it's being communicated, and so forth. If you have interest in doing this, please email us at thepolicy@cps.iau.org with a very short statement just letting us know why you want to do this, your expertise and background. We're only going to be selecting 2 people to help with it. So if you're not selected, thank you, and don't be discouraged by it. There will be lots of activities moving forward. Another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that for the work package 2 work that was released, a lot of things are happening very rapidly. And most of that analysis was done in 2003. And so we're in the initial stages of setting up a standing action team that will be updating sections as new laws and policies are enacted, so we have a clear picture of things as we move forward. Last slide, please. And then I'll just say a couple things about the International Telecommunication Union, although then I invite others to comment. Is that okay, Connie? What we did last night. Did that work? Yes. Okay. So we at the World Radio Conference in 2027, there's several agenda items that are of importance and concern to all of us, concerning all of us. So we have the radio astronomy bands and the radio quiet zones from satellite systems is one of the agenda items. So addressing those impacts. Radio astronomy has long made use of being able to go to remote places to avoid radio frequency interference. And when you put things in orbit in a very intentional design so that there's nowhere that you can go that you're not away from those satellites, it really affects the ability to have those radio quiet zones. And so we have to actually address how this will work and the technical aspects of that. We have the Earth Exploration Satellite Service and the radio astronomy bands that are above 76 gigahertz that have to be discussed, as well as communications in cislunar space. And this is going to be an emerging problem. It's happening a lot faster than I think people truly appreciate. That we are thinking about expanding the use and exploration on the moon itself. And as a result of that, the radio frequency environment in both cislunar space and in the lunar environment is going to change. And we have to be part of that discussion from the very beginning. There are already rules that are put in place for the protection of the lunar far side, but there's a lot of discussion that has to take place. Then there's also this report on the unintended electromagnetic radiation, UEMR. And this I think is a big issue that needs to be addressed, and that is, you have both the intended emission, and then you have things such as like harmonic, second half, and all this other stuff. But then there's just this noise that could be very broad spectrum, electronic noise, and that's difficult to get a handle on. So that's going to be discussed here in this report, and it's ongoing. And then finally, there's this resolution 2019, which is looking at empowering then study groups to discuss sustainable uses of both spectrum and space orbits and how that actually works together. So there's a lot of action that's happening at the ITU. We often talk about what's happening at COPUOS. The ITU is a very incredibly important part of addressing the sustainable use of outer space. I will end there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Aaron. That was really good too. We had a question, but I think Yana has actually been able to answer that. Raymond Wagner, are you happy with the answer?
Well,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Piero.
No, I think we are quite happy with the answer. However, I just want to make a comment here because it's clear, so looking at the comment from Raymond, as you know, the Outer Space Treaty is dated 1967, and it's quite clear that what is happening in what we are seeing happening now has taken almost everybody by surprise. And so all the rules and regulation and policies has to be now reviewed because nobody would have imagined a few years ago that we were expecting tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit. And I think that this is creating a number of issues from the traffic management, from the increase of the risk of the additional debris. And I think we as astronomers should be proud to have been the first one to raise the flag of the danger that is created by the constellation that has to be taken into account. Just because astronomy was the first to be affected by the constellation, because we are seeing them, we are measuring them, they are interfering right now with our astronomical observation. All the other effects, the problem of the traffic management, the debris, and all the rest, which is connected to the increase of the population of the low Earth orbit, will become more visible in the future. we are seeing that right now. And so we had the dubious merit to have raised the flag very soon, as soon as the first satellite were launched on the constellation. So this is just a comment, but certainly all the committee involved in this regulation, both COPWAS and ITU, are now facing the new situation, and certainly it will take time to achieve an understandable and acceptable set of rules, but that is what we have to expect in the future.
Okay, just to let you know, there is an interesting conversation under Raymond Wagner's question, which Shiana and Alex Borloff and Raymond Wagner have, been conversing. So if you want to follow that, that's a pretty good conversation going on there. And Matteo, our comms director for CPS, would like to just point your attention to the incredible brochure that we have for CPS, and the link is in the chat. Yeah. And okay, and again, I think that's about it. I don't see any other questions. There was a comment. I heard somebody say,
Aaron,
Connie, I just wanted to comment a little bit further on some of what Piero was saying, because I want to also highlight, where some of the dangers are, where some of the opportunities are from the international context. The Outer Space Treaty, absolutely written during the Cold War. One, it shows that it's amazing what can actually happen even in difficult geopolitical times. So that's kind of one thing to mention. Another thing, though, is that it is a very vague but binding treaty in many areas. And so there are concepts of due regard, non-interference. And these actually, it can be frustrating in some ways, but it also makes the treaty very flexible. And so it remains relevant, very relevant today, despite the, things happening that we did not see coming necessarily. So, or at least, see now. And so what the opportunity then is that on the national level, in order to meet the obligations, then that's where the policies and the underlying regulations and rules need to ultimately change to meet those obligations. There needs to be clarification to states and their actors on what those commitments are in order to achieve things like due regard, what the limits of the non-interference are, and so forth. And I think that's what's really important for what the IAU is doing, because the IAU has that opportunity, as Piero was saying, the first ones to really step up and talk about this. And it's not the first time either. If you look at the Westford Needles, astronomers were also one of the very first groups to step up and talk about space sustainability when that came up. When again, the IAU has a very important role to play in helping to understand what due regard really means, what non-interference really means, and how states will meet their obligations of international law through their national mechanisms in today's world.
Thank you.
Very good
Thank you,
answer. Thank
Aaron.
you.
In fact, a final comment, if you like, about you have to understand that proceeding and having consensus at the level of the COPOS, of the UN Committee for Peaceful Use of Outer Space, is a lengthy process. And certainly the current geopolitical situation is not helping in obtaining consensus. And so I think it's quite important to highlight the fact that now there is a group of friends, which is now 18 delegations of very important countries that agree to act in terms of protecting the dark and quiet sky. So at least they have this group of important delegation that are presenting now in February a conference room paper, a document, which contains the recommendation that we've been discussing about in terms of protection of the dark and quiet sky. Now, I think that these countries, by signing this conference room paper, are committed to follow the recommendation that they're themselves proposing. And so we will insist that at the national level, at least, those countries will implement policies and they have the power to do so, that start taking into consideration the recommendation that we have been providing and they agree on. So I think that with this approach, which is not ideal, but it's in some sense is a good progress in terms of becoming conscious of the consequences of this revolution in the use of the low Earth orbit space. And so I hope that this can increase the number of delegations that find useful that at national level they consider very carefully what is happening in the outer space.
Mhm. And there continues on the chat a conversation by Raymond and Yana and Alex on accountability. So if you'd like to follow their conversation, it's really very intriguing. Okay.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, thank you. And I should say that we will be making this recording available on our website. And also someone was asking how to join, Aaron, the policy group. And I think that means they're already a member of CPS. So I directed them to the policy email. Actually, I shared it with everybody. So now everybody can join. And you'll get a lot of emails from people. Anyway, I think I want to thank all of our speakers, all of the co-leads that stepped up and gave you the latest and greatest from each of the hubs. They are doing, as you can see, and I'm boasting now, they're doing tremendous work. But again, it can only be done with your contributions and your involvement. And this is one of our calls to action to get you all to join at least one of the hubs and make a difference. I'm sure you have the expertise to do so. So with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Piero to give his final thoughts.
Yes, I just resonate what you just said, Connie. I would like to thank you all for participating in this first town hall directed to the community of affiliated members. If we join together the number of participants between this session and the previous one that we had this morning, my morning, we had almost a bit more than a quarter of the entire community of affiliated members, which, considering that you're all volunteers and you have all own occupation and commitments, I think this is quite remarkable. And we will continue to repeat this regularly. And as I said, we will now have different channels to continue to inform you about the activity of the CPS and continuously inviting you to collaborate, because without your effort, then we will not be able to progress. So I thank you very much, both for participating in this meeting and for your contribution, very valued contribution in terms of suggestion, comments, and actual work that you are providing. So thank you very much, and we're looking forward to continue our fantastic collaboration.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye then.
Bye-bye.
So Piero and Federico and any of the co-leads, if you want to stay and talk for just a minute, you're more than welcome.
Actually, Connie, I have really to leave now, so we will be in touch by the usual means.
Okay, that's fine too. Thank you so much. Oh, 3 new messages.
Okay.